What would happen if an SUV were raised by a family of sports cars?
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where this week we are out and about in the newly refined 2022 Mazda CX-5. Now, the CX-5 is no stranger to me, not only to me as a journalist, but also to me personally, as my family currently has a first-generation CX-5 still burning gas out on the roads today. Now, what's amazing about this 2022 is that although it very much resembles the body style that we first saw back in 2017, Mazda seems to have surprised us yet again with little fine-tuned details here and there that add up to one big difference. But if you want to talk about big, well, let's talk about the price tag here, because one of these is going to set you back a pretty sizable amount. The CX-5 Turbo all-wheel drive that I'm in right now cost just under $39,000 as this one sits. So not inexpensive by any means, but considering this isn't even the signature trim, which costs significantly more, there is quite a lot on offer here. How much on offer? Well, let's start with the performance category and get this baby out on the road. You know, as somebody who's spent a fair amount of seat time in the CX-5 over a number of years, one thing that I've never felt that this car ever needed in its life was more power, or just really more of anything. I mean, yeah, I would expect Mazda to give this thing a full refresh, but here for 2022, as I said, it's just been little minute changes. I mean, the last time we saw a CX-5 get completely redone was again back in 2017. So what has 5 years of knowledge really equated to? Well, what Mazda has done is they've given us a much more updated suspension, so the ride is way more compliant, yet still very sporty, as I would expect from a Mazda product. But the last thing I ever thought that they would do is give this thing even more power than it had already. Now, on paper, running on regular gas, it's the same thing as before. 227 horsepower, 310 foot-pounds of torque from a 2.5-liter turbocharged Skyactiv 4-cylinder. But if you were to run this thing on premium gasoline, which I would hope you would do from the get-go, that's where it comes into play. Now you would be getting 256 horsepower and a whopping 320 foot-pounds of torque. And considering how small a footprint the CX-5 takes up on the road, well, what that equates to is a serious dose of get up and go. Unfortunately though, in all the glitz and glamour of being a turbocharged compact CUV, well, there are a couple of downsides. The first thing is, I said it covers a pretty small footprint on the road, and I'm not lying. Sitting right here in the driver's seat, looking out a pretty sizable windshield, I've got great visibility in all directions. One thing that I've noticed is it feels a little bit narrow in here. It doesn't feel like it has as much space as a lot of its competition would have. And I know that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, a lot of people who buy these, they drive them by themselves or maybe with their girlfriend, spouse, whoever. But you know, one thing that the CX-5 doesn't do very well, at least in the turbo model, is fuel economy. Running on regular gas, I've averaged about 23, 24 miles per gallon combined, and it's only rated at a top of about 27 miles per gallon on the highway. So needless to say, with gas prices being what they are, it's not the best in the world, but I mean, if you drive it right, you'll probably get about 30. And I mean, that's if you drive it like a grandma. But you know, to complain about lower fuel economy in your turbocharged CUV, it's kind of missing the point. Mazda has always been proud of this little statement they call Jinba Itai. And what they mean is they want the driver of one of their cars to feel like they have the same relationship with their vehicle as a horse would with its rider. You both have to work at it, you both have to put in the same amount of effort, and ultimately the reward should be greater, right? Well, driving this, I definitely do feel like it's the best of both worlds. It can be very compliant, very comfortable, and you know, Mazda has made some changes to make it feel a little bit better, just a little bit better. You have the Mazda Intelligent Drive Mode selector, for example, which normally would just include Sport and Normal mode. Now, Sport mode's fun, don't get me wrong, it puts you in the torque band almost immediately, and this thing will really pick up its skirt and go if you need it to. But let's say you want to be a bit adventurous with your CX-5. Well, there is another mode in here called Off-Road, which basically tunes the iActive all-wheel drive to be a little bit less sporty and eager and a little bit more slower paced and just kind of taking it easy, as you would if you're going to take your small CUV off into the boonies. But you know what though? Even though as I sit here contemplating the idea that I'm sitting in an almost $40,000 compact CUV that isn't even the most loaded model that Mazda can offer, well, you know, there is a little bit of a question mark hanging over my head right now. As somebody who's had a lot of these cars in their life, or at least cars from this manufacturer, it still feels like it has, for lack of a better term, that Mazda magic. It feels like something that isn't as mainstream or plebeian, or something that just wouldn't look out of place in a little bit of a nicer environment. And you know what? Would I take one of these? Absolutely. Any day of the week I would have one. However, knowing the competition and knowing what the competition has created in the same sort of realm, well, again, it's going to put buyers in a bit of a predicament. So I guess the question becomes, what does Mazda have to offer that the competitors don't, aside from a much more performance-focused drive? Well, that's where the looks department comes in. Now, if there's one thing about Mazda that captivates me more than anything, is that I kind of compare their design team to a very fine-tuned team of plastic surgeons. They take something that's already very, very good with the first iteration of the CX-5's Kodo design language that we see here coming about in 2017, and they give it a little nip here, little tuck up there, and suddenly all of these minute little changes make a big difference. But if you want to talk about big, the part of the CX-5 this week that has made my jaw drop more than anything is the color. The Soul Red Crystal Metallic, the best paint color that Mazda has had in their arsenal in its entire history. And I know I'm not the only one saying that. This color is just delicious, especially when it's clean like this. Oh, it's almost mouth-watering. It's just so good looking. But if you want to talk about good looking, I actually really am digging the design changes. You notice the headlights have been updated. You have the semicircle LED daytime running lights, the high and low beams. Those are still LEDs. You have auto high beam assist on this one. You've got LED turn signals in here as well. They've updated the grille slightly. And again, if you go for either the base 2.5 turbo or the carbon edition, you will get a black grille. If you go for the signature trim, this will change to a chrome laced grille with still the darker inset in the middle. I love the inner workings of it, by the way. A little bit more kind of like chainmail, if you will. But Mazda has also kind of deleted some of the excess from the CX-5 and a lot of their cars for that matter. You notice things like the fog lights. Those are no longer available on pretty much any new Mazda vehicle. And you also notice on this one, being the base turbo, there is no front or rear park assist. We do still have a lot of active safety. So you have the glossed in Mazda badge here, which includes the adaptive radar cruise. And you'll also notice there is a lot of gloss black going on. Aside from the grille, you've got it on the chin spoiler here. You've got the wheels, the wheel arches, the mirrors, the side skirts. I mean, it's all over. Now, in the world of CUVs and SUVs, the CX-5 is a little bit on the small side. It's about 180 inches long, and even though it has almost 8 inches of ground clearance, as many people have said already, it sort of looks more like an inflated hatchback that's just been put on smaller stilts, if you will. Now, one reason it does sit a little bit higher is because down here, even on this base turbo model, we have 19-inch alloy wheels. Now, if you go for the signature trim, these will be painted silver, but if you go with the base or For the Carbon Edition, you'll get the black ones like you see here. You've got 225/55 series Toyo tires. And, you know, to be honest, I actually like the black. In contrast, you know, you got a little bit of gloss black here around the wheel arch, but in contrast with the red, it is just absolutely gorgeous. And although we're dealing with the base turbo trim here, it does come pretty well equipped as standard. And for the price tag, some pretty premium options are included. You have the blacked out side view mirrors, which as you can see, they are power folding as standard. Even here on the base turbo, you have the LED turn signal on the side with blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, which is also included as standard. What's also included but sort of missing is the power tilting and sliding sunroof. Now I'd say it's missing because supposedly a couple of Mazda's other CUVs that are a little bit smaller than this will offer a panoramic roof, but this one has to make do with the standard size up top. But what seems to be a little bit dated about this car is not the advanced keyless access, or at least the fob part of it isn't. The key itself is nice and thin. It's gotten a lot bigger, especially compared to how it was way before. You've got lock, unlock, you've got the power tailgate and panic, and a releasable key blade that comes from inside the fob itself. But the way you unlock and lock it, especially compared to say the new Mazda 3 that I reviewed not long ago, is there are no touch points to lock or unlock the car. Just a simple button that the CX-5 has had pretty much since its beginning. You want to unlock it, you just push it once. When you unlock it, you'll see that the mirrors automatically fold out. And if you want to lock it back, you just push the button again, or you can actually walk away from the car and it locks itself for you. And again, just like at the front, when you look at this car from the back, the design does seem pretty familiar to how it's been over the past few years. But again, just like the front, it does seem that the little details do make a lot more of a statement. You look at the taillights here, they're sort of a carbon copy of what you would see on the headlights, with the main LED taillight bulbs being C-shaped. You've got LED turn signals and LED reversing lights. You do get a power tailgate on all the turbo models, but even all the way up to the Signature, there is no hands-free assist, which is a bit of a downer because other vehicles in the same sort of class are not only bigger, but do offer a hands-free tailgate either as standard or as an option. So I kind of would have liked to have seen that on this one, or maybe even on a Signature, but nevertheless, you cannot get one even despite the fact the tailgate is powered. Now, you do have a backup camera under there, which is nice, but also you can see we have the rear bumper applique on this one. That's about $125 if you want that. A little bit more of the gloss black down along the bottom, and we have a revised dual exhaust to complete the look. Now, perhaps the most unfortunate part about the CX-5 is that even though it's not the smallest CUV in Mazda's arsenal, it does seem to suffer from a little bit of a lack in utility. And once this power tailgate rises, behind the back seats you're looking at right at 30 cubic feet of cargo volume, which, to put that in perspective, that's about 15 cubic feet less than a Mazda CX-30 has with all of its seats down. Now, speaking about putting the seats down, you can actually grab hold of these levers here in the back, and you can fold all of that 40-20-40 split fold seat completely flat. That's assuming you have the front seats all the way up as well, so the seat can fold completely down. Now, once you do that, you're looking at 59.3 cubic feet, which is, again, not class leading by any stretch. And really the only other place you'll find any kind of storage in here is under the rear little latch right here. And you can see there is a spare tire. You can lower this floor down just a hair if you need to, but it's not going to provide you all too much extra. So if you're looking for the most utilitarian CUV in Mazda's arsenal, well, you might want to look at something a little bit bigger. Now, you would think that with the CX-5 being one of Mazda's best sellers over a multitude of years, that for this newest generation, they would have changed absolutely everything. But unfortunately, while the outside may have changed a good bit, it seems like the interior kind of got the short end of the stick. Now, don't get me wrong though, as a base turbo model, there is a lot to like in here. Black leather seats, you've got the red accent stitching on this one. Both of the front seats have power adjustments, and crucially, both of them are also heated and ventilated as standard on all turbo models. The driver's seat here, you can see, has a 2-person memory adjustment, and again, both seats pretty much have all the power adjustments you could want. But certain elements like the steering wheel, for example, I love Mazda Mazda steering wheels. They're always nice, compact. They got nice little grips up at the top. This one is leather wrapped. So again, nice, but I kind of prefer the design of Mazda's newer steering wheels with a little bit more of a thin rim. I kind of like the central design part of it a little bit more. This one just makes it look, well, in my eyes, a little bit dated. Not such a bad thing though, because also you have the little paddle shifters here on the back, and I do mean little. They are set a little further in on the wheel itself. The steering column is manual tilt and telescope, and because this is a base turbo model, not something a little more loaded, all of the safety features, which would be in these blank spaces here, are missing. The only one we have on this one is the ability to turn off the lane departure warning and steering assist, and we also have a separate button for opening the tailgate. Now, while details like the design of the steering wheel in this CX-5 may not exactly be to my particular taste, one thing that I cannot fault Mazda for at all is the craftsmanship they put into their interiors. They feel so much more better put together and a lot better quality than you might expect. I mean, look at the dash. We've got leather up here. It's stitched halfway across. I mean, I'm not exactly a fan of the sort of plastic faux carbon-like trim that we have up here. I much prefer the wood trim that you would get on something like a Signature. It's accented by aluminum silver, not only on the vents, but also on the dash and door trims. But some details seem a little bit more simple than that. Take, for example, the adaptive cruise control functions. They're all right here, very clearly labeled, much larger buttons, so that is a plus to this older design steering wheel. And same thing over here on the left. You've got the info button here in the middle of the Seek Track function, which allows you to go through the multi-information display housed within the speedometer. But apart from that, you got voice recognition, hands-free Bluetooth, and volume controls. And again, it just seems so much more simple. Now, if the multi-information display inside your tachometer wasn't enough to kind of convince the tech heads out there, one thing that Mazda has gotten a bit better at is their infotainment system. Now in this car, we have a 10.25-inch screen, which is pretty class competitive. That's about the same size you would find in a Kia or Hyundai model, and it also houses Mazda's newest Connect infotainment system, and of course it has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and in this case we have the $450 navigation system, which honestly I would just forsake that altogether. The system itself is rather basic and it does the job exactly as you would expect it to, but considering you get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard with things like Google Maps, Waze, and so on, I would just forsake the navigation altogether. But apart from that, everything else in here is relatively straightforward. You could control the information center by using the rotary dial down in the lower console, and again, it's worked like all the other Mazda systems that I've used, and also like all the other Mazda systems that I've dealt with. One thing that I have had a bit of an issue with is the connectivity side of things. With Bluetooth, sometimes it seems to kind of disconnect and then connect again. Same thing with the Android Auto, it doesn't seem to work all the time. So maybe Mazda needs to work a little bit on their connectivity settings. Either that or I need to get a new phone. And of course, also with the fact that this is a base turbo, you're not going to get a 360 camera on this unless you go for the upper end Signature trim. So in this one, they've kind of shrunk the camera size down a little bit. I was kind of expecting it to maybe be full screen, you know, blow it up a little bit more, but the quality of the camera is so much better that I feel if they did blow it up, it would be a little bit more grainy and probably not feel, I guess, as quality as you might want. But nevertheless, even though there's no front or rear park assist on this one, they do give you the guidance lines, which, just word of warning, that little red line there measures out about a foot from the back of the car. So that does give you kind of a sense of the distance that you're playing with here. But if there's one selling point of all Mazda vehicles in this day and age that seems to attract me more than even performance or the craftsmanship of the interior, if you guys know me, you know what it is. It is the audio system in here. And Mazda has had a very solid partnership with BOSE over the years. And this CX-5 is no exception. We have a 10-speaker premium audio system with BOSE Centerpoint surround sound and the BOSE Audio Pilot function. Now, both of those are pretty nice on their own, but when you turn on the Centerpoint and you get to experience the system as a whole, well, it just makes this vehicle, again, seem a lot more premium than it really is. Now, if you thought the screen in the newest Mazda Connect system was technology enough, well, Mazda didn't stop there. Aside from the dual zone climate control system with your heated and ventilated seats, and in this case, a heated steering wheel as well, Mazda did include things like a wireless charger as standard on all turbo models. Now, just like a lot of others, if you have a large case on your phone, do beware that this system may not work to your expectations, or it may not even work at all. So if you don't have a case on your phone, you're in luck. If you do, well, you might want to take your phone out of said case before you actually use the wireless charger. And even though this CX-5 is marketed as a true compact CUV, one of the other areas that was sort of a letdown for me was the back seat room. Now, I understand that back seat space can change depending on how tall or short the driver may be, but considering I'm 6'1" and that driver's seat is exactly where I would have it at its most comfortable setting for me as a driver, well, it does come at the cost of some back seat room. Now, the quality doesn't change back here though. As I said, you have 40-20-40 split fold seats back here, which when you fold down the armrest, you discover the standard turbo model gets heated rear seats as well. That's always a nice seat to have. I kind of wish they were heated and cooled, kind of like the front, but that's just the picky side of me. Inside here, you actually have 2 USB charging points as well. So instead of them being at the back of the center console, Mazda put them in the armrest so you can store your phone along with them. But when it actually comes to getting in the back, well, the step-in height's not bad. You don't really have to duck your head, but if I was to sit behind myself, you can see I have absolutely no room back here at all. So I would suggest putting shorter people in the back and taller people up front. Headspace though, I can't really complain about that. I've actually got quite a bit of headroom up here. And of course you got the blank handles up there as well. But overall, I mean, back seat room, it just depends on how tall or short your driver may be. So you can either have a lot of space or not a whole lot at all. And unfortunately, this wraps up our review and drive of the 2022 Mazda CX-5 Turbo. I'm not gonna lie, I've had quite a lot of fun driving this thing around for a week, and you know what? If you're willing to spend almost $40,000 on a turbocharged, fun to drive, more spirited CUV, I would highly recommend taking a look at one of these. But nevertheless, guys, if you enjoyed this review, or perhaps you learned something about the CX-5 today, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, please don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, it is beneficiary to the both of us in the end. But at the end of the day, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I will see y'all next time, and as always, my credit goes right back to Mazda USA for allowing us access to their vehicle fleet once again. But I hope you all had fun, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.